for joining us for the interviews of the 2022 candidates for Asheville City Council. I'm Cramer, President and CEO of the Asheville Chamber, and I'm joined by one of our great public policy volunteers, Greg Burnette of First Citizens Bank. This interview will be with candidate Andy Ledford. All interviews will be posted to the Chamber's website at ashevillechamber.org/2022 elections. Andy, thank you for joining us. I'm going to jump right in with the first question.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Sure. By 2040, our metropolitan statistical area is expected to have added almost 100,000 people. What do you think is the top priority for how the city will manage that growth?
I believe the top priority for that, and even right now, is infrastructure. You can't add that many houses and that much housing without proper infrastructure to support it. So I believe roads, water improvements, such as that, should come first before adding more housing.
What role do you see economic development playing in that growth?
Well, it kind of goes into the affordable housing. Asheville's a very expensive place to live, and in order to keep people able to live and work here, there has to be jobs that pay well, that are going to employ people. I've worked in the local manufacturing for quite a while, and I see the impact of that, of having good, well-paying jobs that help keep people employed.
So Andy, how do you balance policies like increasing density along certain corridors as a way to accommodate additional housing that we need across the region with neighbors who may be a little uncomfortable with growth or change in their neighborhoods?
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't really have growth without you're going to ruin somebody's view. I mean, basically, that's people come here for the view. I think that looking into places that are underutilized, for example, like not necessarily abandoned, but unused, like for example, the abandoned Kmart on Patton Avenue, or up near the Asheville Mall, the Innsbrook Mall area, and all that, where there's a lot of vacant property that could be reused, and it already has existing infrastructure there for the roads and everything else, utilities. So I think that that would be one thing to look at, to maybe give incentives to redevelop kind of abandoned properties, so to speak.
Andy, what do you think the role of the business community is in our city?
I think it's one of the top things that we have, because without a good business, you're not going to have good jobs. Without good jobs, you're not going to have people here paying taxes, which is where the majority of the city revenue comes from, is property tax. So without good businesses that provide good jobs, it's not self-sustaining.
So Andy, in general, where do you get your information as it relates to what's going on in the community?
So I do try to watch and go to city council meetings. I got a copy of the city budget. I'll tell you, I'm not a politician. I'm new to this, so it has been a lot of learning for me. But get a copy of the city budget. Try to look and see where monies are being spent, what people in the community are looking for. I can tell you, by being in manufacturing, I know some of the struggles that we've had with employees, trying to find good employees and keep them. And I've spoke to some other colleagues that have experienced the same issues for that.
If you become a member of council, what will you do to reach out to the business community to give them a voice? Well,
it's one of the questions that I've posted to some other local business. I've known some people that have owned restaurants and currently still own restaurants and other small businesses around town. And I sent out a little survey. I said, what are 3 things the city does well? what are 3 things you could see the city do improvement, and what is a barrier to entry for new businesses. And I got some really good responses for that. And I think it's good to send that out to business owners and get real feedback from people that are there, that are, that have to manage a payroll and have to manage employees, because it's definitely not an easy job to do.
What's your stance on the issues that are affecting businesses downtown, such as camping and panhandling?
Well, I think that stems from the lack of city employees. The city's experienced a loss of employees. I believe it was just in the WLS they mentioned that. And without employees, not only public safety, but public works, people to work on the roads, people to keep sanitation department to keep everything cleaned up. I don't believe it's the business's responsibility to keep the sidewalk clean. I believe that's the city's responsibility for that. And I think once you can kind of get everything cleaned up, I think some of it will take care of itself, but there has to be some proactive activity from the city to keep this from happening.
Andy, you just mentioned public safety. What do you consider to be the city council's role in maintaining public safety?
Keep police and fire department manned at optimal levels, keep them well paid so they can live here. I believe we heard a statistic that there's only 2 police officers that actually live in the city limits. And I think that being able to keep good employees is going to really increase the safety, because when they've lost so many people and that they can't respond to certain calls, that hurts everybody.
The most recent version of the Bowen report says that we need more housing at every income level. How can city council promote more construction of housing?
I think that will involve, as I said at the very beginning, number one is infrastructure. There is a proposal to do a 200-unit apartment on Long Shoals, and then there's another proposal to do a 80-plus unit housing complex on Sweeten Creek. Now, both Sweeten Creek, it empties out into a 2-lane road. Without improving that road first, it's really going to cause some congestion issues, and similar with Long Shoals. But I think the city's main goal is to not restrict ability to develop. They need to get public input is very important, but somewhere somebody has to compromise to say, we need more housing and this is where it has to go.
Great. So Andy, in 1 minute or less, and I know that's not a lot of time, but in a minute or less, what sets you apart as a candidate?
Well, I'm an engineer by trade. The majority of my job comes from troubleshooting and solving problems. And I believe that if you follow a good methodology to solving a problem, that you can figure out what you need to do and try to do it in the most effective and efficient way.
Great. Well, Andy, thank you for being with us today. As a reminder, you can find interviews of our other candidates at ashevillechamber.org/2022 elections. And please be sure to vote in the primary on Tuesday, May 17th.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.